Have you ever wondered what it takes to build a completely custom Jeep? And I'm not talking about one that you can just go get a bunch of parts offline and just slap it together in a weekend with a bunch of bolt-ons. No, we're gonna build something completely custom from the ground up, and it starts with this 2007 Jeep Wrangler JKU. There's 3 criteria that this thing has to meet. Otherwise, it's going to the scrapyard. It has to be fast, extremely capable, and family friendly. That's 4. Dang it. 3. Now, whether you guys are here to learn, get inspired, or purely enjoy the chaos that I put myself through, I'm glad y'all came. Now let's get into it. Kind of hit that a little hard, didn't I? Oops. This 2007 Jeep JKU started its life out as a bone stock vehicle. I picked it up from a salvage auction for super cheap. It was in a small wreck, but huge bonus, it had a green title, so I could take it out on the road, not have to worry about insurance purposes, stuff like that. It ran, it drove, it actually came into the shop under its own power, maybe not under its own will, because this thing had no idea what it was in for. Now, there was one problem. It had a bad alternator, so I had to fix it, which naturally turned into removing the entire drivetrain, including the engine, transfer case, the axles, and well, everything else associated. Then gutting the interior, dropping the frame, cutting it in half. Yep. And cutting a whole bunch of brackets off of the frame to make room for the new subframe and suspension brackets. All right, so right now I'm trying to get these brackets off. I don't need them, and the subframe is going to French into the frame somewhere around here, so these gotta go. Choppy choppy. It's a weird thing that I noticed as I build on with these projects, as I learn and grow throughout the build, I tend to look back at the whole project and become completely dissatisfied. And it's usually because of how much better I know I can build it, knowing what I do now, which is sort of how we ended up in this position. And of course, I have asked, why do I do this to myself? Historically, and still to this day, part of that answer is I absolutely love pushing my creative abilities further and gaining tons of new skills, which I think many of you love doing as well. But let me tell you a quick story of why I'm doing this now. As I was building my last project, my 1968 Ultra 4 Jeepster, I learned a metric crap ton. But I had unrealistic goals and no foresight. I thought I would be able to build a one-off race car and family wheeling rig all in one shot. And as I built on, things became more and more race car. I got sponsorships. I was talking to people that I would never have imagined speaking with in my life. And I was building a badass rig that I poured my heart and soul into. I was pushing myself physically and mentally harder than I've ever done before. It was putting tons of strain on my relationship with my wife and my kid, and the car was no longer ever going to fulfill the needs of my family, which is what we set out to do. But here's where things changed. My daughter, who was 2.5 years old at the time, looked at me while I was in the shop working on the Jeepster, and she asked, "Daddy, when are we going to be able to go off-road?" And I'm pretty sure my wife saw as my heart sank. And all I could respond with was, I don't know, Nugget. I sat on this really simple question for a little while, and within a few weeks, I bought this Jeep you see behind me, stripped down the race car, and I parted it out. I had a huge flip of the direction of my life, which turned into upending my career as a nurse, leaving off-road racing and that whole world behind, and pushing myself to make my own dreams come true, which wasn't ever really racing. We decided we were going to get back to enjoying the build process and get back out on the trails for those fun wheeling trips with friends. It was also time to get back on track with what truly makes me happy, being a damn good father. Oh, come on. And a damn good husband. Plus, I want to be able to take my family anywhere that we can point and shoot and then enjoy some wild ass adventures along the way. Also, I like building really stupid stuff. And that being said, let me walk you through my current line of thinking on this project. I think you're really gonna like the components that I have selected for this whole thing because they're roughly based off the same parts that I had in the Ultra 4 Jeepster, which was built for racing. A lot of this project design revolves around the drivetrain, which includes an LS-based engine, a 4L80 transmission, and an Atlas transfer case. And to make sure that I could reliably put that power down onto the ground, I opted for a fairly unique axle combination. Now, these axles are not your everyday run-of-the-mill setup from the junkyard. Although the junkyard axles probably would have been an easier way to go compared to what I put myself through. But we don't build this stuff because it's easy. In fact, we build it because it's hard. And we love pushing ourselves to the next level any chance we get. With this project, I pushed myself past multiple skill plateaus while designing in CAD and building a set of fabricated housings. These are hands down my favorite part of the build, most likely because of all the sleepless nights, quite literally, since I was on third shift at the time I was designing them. The front is based on a 4 9-inch center section, and I'll be using a high pinion third member from Gearworks in there, some beefy axle shaft, and some strong as all get out inner C's and knuckles from American Iron Off-Road. The rear is a little bit different, and that's because it's a fabricated 14-bolt axle. It uses a 70/75 billet aluminum third member that carries a 10.5-inch ring gear from the well-renowned 14-bolt axle commonly found in a GM pickup truck. This rear axle it'll also be running some really beefy axle shafts and stuff, as well as running some 05 plus unit bearing outers. And I'm proud to say that both of these axle housings are 100% my design. And honestly, I never thought I would have the privilege of owning a set of fabricated axles. These things were typically way out of my price range, but through some bartering, freelance design work, and a little manual labor, I was able to pay for most of the axle components by helping out another company with the 14-bolt housing design and building the first set of 5 housings for them. Not to mention, I also developed some really cool partnerships with companies like American Iron Off-Road, in which Josh over there, he's been a huge help to me during this build as well as the last one. And moving onward, the frame. It's roughly a factory frame with just a few modifications thus far, and at this point, we have the front frame chopped to make room for the Moto-Built Tomahawk front bumper. We got rid of all the factory suspension brackets. We opted for a full rear frame chop from Moto-Built, which raises the rear frame rails and sucks them in, and that creates tons more room for coilovers and to get all the up travel that you could hope for. As for the suspension, I went ahead and got a universal subframe kit from Goat Built, which is going to get Frenched into the frame somehow. Now, You'll like how slick this kit is, as it locates the engine, the trans, and the transfer case. It keeps the drivetrain center of gravity super duper low, and it gives me some really good suspension geometry for some damn good driving characteristics. As of right now, the suspension is going to be a 4-link front and rear setup. It's going to be full hydro steering, 14-inch coilovers up front, 16-inch coilovers out back, a pair of sway bars from TK1 Racing, as I love how these things handle, having them in the front and the rear, and it controls that body roll beyond what the 4-link geometry alone is capable of, especially with a full-bodied rig. Other than that, I've got some 40-inch Mickey Thompson Baja Bosses on some bead locks. Those things are just waiting to get beat on. A roll cage is going to be a necessity for this rig, and I'll walk you guys through the design and build of that when we get there, because there's probably gonna be some rolls in the future. Now, as for the engine, I have some special things planned for that that I think you'll like. Y'all wanna guess what it is? Go ahead and tell me your guesses down below. I have a lot of ideas for this rig, as well as for several other rigs and builds. And with help from y'all and our collective ingenuity, I think we can build some really cool stuff. I hope y'all enjoyed the introductory video of our JKU project. Let me know what you guys think and what you want to see in the future in the comments down below. And here's my promise. I will always push myself to get better and better to bring you guys the content that you love. I know you'll like the next one, not to mention all the other projects that will be coming up in the future. And with all of that, I really want to say how absolutely grateful I am for my wife and kid for helping me become a better man every day. Also, I want to thank my friends and family that have supported me and have always been there. And without them, I don't know if I would be here to share what I've learned and to say that the majority of our limitations that we perceive are simply limitations that we've placed on ourselves. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next one.